Um, Reprogramming the self, the group, and the what was that thread?
And the planet, or you can also, I mean, you got the society in between, but then you got the
Yeah,
planet as
yeah,
a whole.
the self and group, and like the way in which like the isomorphy on that, coming back to the whole on, right? The self
Mhm.
being not distinct from the group, and the implications of that is like what is happening in me is happening in the group, like by definition, and what is happening um in the group is also happening in me. And the nuance in that is that the the things that are happening in me are not mine alone, right? They are manifestations of the entire group's dynamic, right? So even though it is happening particularly here, like this is coming up because of what's going on in that context, right?
Uh-huh.
And that encourages us um, to not work alone, right? Because it's not just mine and it is the group's, right? I don't have to process it and metabolize it by myself. Like we as the group, the collective can do that. That's part of the game. It's like, hey, can we identify these things and like work to um like not so much as squash them, but like again, this idea of like explorer role versus survival role. Survival roles
Hmm.
are gonna pop up, but can we reactivate the explorer role to explore even the survival role? And that's how we like metabolize and integrate
Hmm.
continues.
Yeah, yeah. It's that distributed um, cognition, distributed processing,
Mm-hmm.
wherein you don't have to, and in fact, you're incapable of processing all of your trauma yourself, or all of the information you need to be in that group context.
Totally. Which makes absolute fucking sense because like none of it started from you in isolation, right?
Uh-huh.
Like it's when you think about it, it's not like just the trauma popped up out of context free in me. Nothing is context free. So the wound, the schism, the survival role pattern that we learned as a way of addressing it, that at one point was an adaptive strategy for a particular point in our development, you know that happened in context, in relationship, often with other people and events. So it only makes sense that like the development of that strategy beyond that strategy should happen in relationship with other people.
Hmm.
So where did
Okay,
we
check.
well what do you got?
Also, I've got a little bit of AI juice here. So check out the updated image, which I just put on the brief. It's an old image from
Sweet.
a while back, but it looks fucking fire.
Here, let me make you co-host so you can screen share. That way we can
Sure.
also get it on the record.
Yeah. So yeah, this here, it's like this
Oh yeah.
interface of the global brain, and you've got your
Sick.
controller in front of you, and then just the landscape of
Yes.
possibility in front.
Mhm.
And then here on OpenAI, give the description by game design of the Playdrive, an interface for humanity to play with the global brain. And there's some cool things here. One example of a Playdrive interface could be a digital game that allows players to solve puzzles or complete challenges that contribute to the global brain's collective knowledge. As players progress through the game, they would be contributing to the development of new technologies, ideas, and solutions to global problems. The game could be designed to encourage collaboration and teamwork, fostering social connections and a sense of community among players.
Well, at least the global brain gets it. So good.
So yeah, we can just take this, and then we'll
Big
see what we can do with that. I'll just throw this down at the bottom for now.
epic.
I'm just
Let
running
me
a few
see.
other things. These are not bad, but they're not quite that one just has the interface
Hmm.
to it. So I think we'll just stick with
Yeah.
this one just really nails it. Real nails
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
experience.
Colorway is good too.
Okay, so
So yeah, there. Let's go back to the beginning of the thread since we didn't get. I'd like to get that on the record as well. So the which is what? How did you say it again?
Which thread?
The interface with the global brain, like the Playdrive and
Yeah, so the global brain as a games console and this multiplayer experience of everybody coordinating games with each other
mhm.
in a way that there's no disruption of the functionality. Functionality is not the right word, but of the flow of the brain as a whole. So you
Mhm.
can have many sub games which are being played, but they're all in coordination with the metagame,
Word.
which is the regenerative metagame. So it's always in evolution. It's always aware of the process of novelty, which is being generated as an emergent property of the the evolutionary process, which is going within itself and outside of itself. So
Mhm.
it's the name of the game is how to how to
I
help the players uh, evolve as fast and as smoothly as possible.
Word. And that I think is kind of the picking up there. Like, so what we're looking for is actually like the explosion, the Cambrian explosion of novelty that is sufficient for us to basically like search the solution space as fast as fucking possible because we don't know what it's going to look
Mm-hmm.
like. So we want like vast, vast, vast sea of novelty that allows us to do the adaptation thing at an incredibly accelerated rate so that as the selective pressures come, which they just are, like I don't think we need to think so much about like for the creation of selective pressures. They're just going to be on our ass from every dimension. That is the everything
Yeah,
crisis. And so the ability to like a vast explosion of novelty to explore that adaptation solution space so that we can fucking retain the solutions that do seem to be like adequately adaptive, sufficiently adaptive. And
yeah,
then we can think about like the way in which we cross pollinate and like interweave and like actively take those, put those things, not so much as like a tournament format, but much more like actually like reproductive format. Like let's okay, we've got mama game and papa game, and they made, baby game, and yay,
mm-hmm.
is that baby game more adaptive, less adaptive? Throw that into the novelty generation mix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so the element of interconnecting and of consciously making those connections between players, between games, between rule sets, between any of the game dynamics becomes crucial. Of
Word.
so how do you connect the right neurons with the right neurons?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get them communicating in the right way? How do you get them firing together? It's like right now we're firing together,
Word.
but to do that, there are these prerequisites of the common language which we speak and the common understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to bring up highly complex concepts, and because of the previous conversations that we've had, because we fired together on those concepts beforehand, then we we can directly reach to the depths of the roots of meaning of those
Mm.
concepts.
Word. So the games themselves are a grammar, right? That the more we are effectively playing similar games, right? The same games, like the games themselves become a grammar. They help encode our behavior,
Mm-hmm.
and they provide the vibe, the lewd itself that becomes like the underlying structure. At some point, like we're like right now, like Are we in a glass bead game? Are we in a liberating structure? Like at some point, like your proficiency with those games should allows them to fade into the background,
Exactly.
and the elements just are sort of there, like in this
Yeah.
sort of space in which we sort of pick and grab and go.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so you have the formal games and you have the informal games, and you have restricted states of flow, which are practiced to then afterwards open up to larger states of flow.
Mm. No, I like that double diamond, of course, right? This idea of like constrain within boundaries and then like give time for that explosion and let those things sort of grow and see what happens, and then put them back into that again, that selective pressure, and then see
Yeah.
which ones are see what again, the novelty, what's retainable. Mm. And I want to come back to this thread around like the really the begin. So we're, the meme of the global brain, like the global coordination super organism that is
Yeah.
like all of human culture and civilization. That being the big thing that everybody sort of has some sense that we're working on, that we're creating and building towards, and the way in which the Playdrive can help us make that meta game more explicit and more tangible. So while we have a sense of this larger thing that we're doing together, that we can start to make it like really, really, for those that don't have a sense, legible.
Yeah. So how do we play the global brain into existence? It is emerging in and of itself, but it needs to be tended. There are wild neurons which are sprouting out into deep amygdalitic areas, and like right down into the was it the hindbrain? These deep traumatized areas of the global brain,
right?
which
And
is all of this unmetabolized collective trauma through the history of empire.
Word. And what like a point of fear, right? Because it's like, let's be real, it's there. When we're talking about like this massively multiplayer, like global coordination, Lorecraft comes up as a very important game within that game. And
Yeah.
I think about that, for lack of a better word, the team that we're playing against, right? If you want to invoke the cue that will not be spoken, right? Of anonymity, right? Like they are playing this Lorecraft game as a live action role play, a reality game at a very high level, in fact.
Indeed.
Right? So the like making that game a significantly tick more conscious, right? As I see, I think there we go. This may be a good enough to be like come close to essential, right? The difference between fear motivated unconscious lorecraft and game creation versus a much more intentional and conscious version of that lorecraft and game creation. So can we just be a little bit, if we can be incrementally 1% more self-aware, then I have a good degree of confidence that if we can run enough cycles, like we can out evolve that shit and integrate it, more importantly.
So a Lorecraft interface comes to mind as one of the design goals for Playdrive, and we can have some things which can emerge, but we can also concentrate on, okay, so what are some concrete things which we really need for this interface with the global brain? So we're going to need social computation interface. We're going to need a way of how do we coordinate collectively, decentralizing as much of the decision-making process to a collective will, which is then clearly defined and programmed in a way where nobody has to think anymore about, okay, what is my role? What do I have to do? That possibility space is being collapsed to the maximum, and simultaneously leaving the maximum amount of freedom to each of the nodes to do the work which they need to do. So I actually came on this language called crowdlang recently, which reflects practically exactly the social computation thoughts, which have been like the line which we've been following. So
nice.
Let me bring this up. Yeah. So a programming language for the systematic exploration of human computation systems.
Nice.
And these are people who are thinking along the lines of the global brain and how to organize it. And there are some very useful things like basic operators, task decomposition and aggregation. So this is a full spec. It's pretty much exactly what we'd thought of how it would work. But you basically have a problem, and then you have a process, and then you have a result. So you have an input of, okay, so what needs to be done. And then here, for example, this is a divide and conquer, which means you take in the issue at hand, or do you take in the prompt? That's the best way of putting it. You take in the prompt, and then you divide it into its various pieces, and then you assign these individual tasks to whoever it may be. It may be one person who's going through the individual tasks, or multiple. Then you have the same, this is the opposite, like aggregate, multiply, like get multiple people doing the same task, reduce, and so these are like some fundamental building blocks for it, which
build some redundancy. Like, so what jumps out to me is like a concept that I would like to foreground is like the difference between effectiveness and efficiency, right? So the ability to like prime for effectiveness, which might have, like, in this explosion of novelty, might have will probably have an extraordinary amount of redundancy. But that actually is what enables the effectiveness. It's not efficient. Any of those parts can break and shit will still happen, right? Because there's enough overlap.
Yeah. So because you could automate queues of computation where you say you are open to this kind of task. I'm willing to listen to these lectures and summarize them in this form. But you could also have multiple people who have all accepted that same task. And whenever a unit enters into the system, it's distributed, say, to you. But then if for whatever reason you can't do it at that time, or you feel like it's not your niche, you just pass it on, and then it'll go to the next person in the queue. And you can have these really long queues of people on very general tasks to very specific, and then always trying to have as much redundancy of other agents who can perform those tasks.
Word. So this is the thing that Jordan dropped with about that project liminality. The line that like rung like a bell when I look at this is like the who we're talking with, about what, and how, right? So that being like the elements of this, you said it was a problem statement, like a particular offer, right? There is some possibility that we are describing, and that possibility can be defined both by its problem or by its solution, right? We just say, hey, I want to have a fucking birthday party, I want this shit. That's kind of a problem. Or you could say, pizza party, solution. Propose either side of that, so to speak. And then the who being the people that have either the skills, the resources, the available capacity to help bring that offer into existence. And then, of course, my fetish being some description of how, like, so which are the games that we're going to play in order to bring that particular possibility with these people into reality.
So it's the prompt response. You prompt the global brain, just like you're prompting the AI right now. But when we'll be able to prompt the global brain, then the global brain will be able to organize all the resources in a way to make the most magical things happen. So you could say, okay, we prompt new water well in Burkina Faso,
Hmm.
And then it'll just go bang, and it'll
Right.
start coordinating with all the agents and organizing the computation. And a lot of it will be AI based, but there'll also be the human element. And
Word.
then very quickly, everything will happen to then just
Like shit just starts, people just start snapping into like right place, right time. It's funny, like the scene that comes up to me is like the handoff of a fucking prison yard for whatever reason, right? You know, the passing of a fucking note across a classroom, right? The way in which like it goes to
yeah,
Johnny and Sally and Susie, and then just
yeah,
like it's just like this, you know, the behind the back, under the leg, down on the floor, kicked
yeah.
across the room, right? You
Because
know,
the teacher
bounces
is
off.
watching.
Exactly, like bounces. Ooh, the fire. Exactly. The teacher is watching, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
ooh,
yeah. And
ooh.
that's where the subverse comes in, because
Mhm,
the teacher is always watching, and to what extent are we free to actually do and to dream these dreams? Because
mm.
there are some neurons within
Word.
the global brain which want to control the whole brain. Or I
Hmm.
mean, they can even be outside agents. You know how you have those wasps which plant eggs
Hmm.
inside of the brains of other animals and then control,
Word.
turn them into drones and stuff.
Hmm. Well, you know, there's a fucking if to switch metaphors, you know, there isn't a fucking immune system in, you know, current fucking it like whatever you want to call it. You want to call if you want to blame capitalism, blame capitalism. If you want to blame colonization, blame colonization. If you want to whatever that monoculture that is like that human society is sort of developing into that is emblemized by H&M and a McDonald's and a fucking
Mm-hmm.
Starbucks on every corner in like
Yeah.
global polished fucking polished marble shopping mall on
Mm-hmm.
every corner of the fucking planet if you'll let it. That paperclip maximizer, that thing clearly has some form of fucking immune system and is
Completely.
very, very like intolerant of like other like another set of
Yeah, yeah,
values. No, 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 no. Like
yeah.
another set of values must be like fucking, you know, like mass the genocide. Let's just stop there. The amount of
Uh-huh.
genocide against other value systems, like let's take that shit as like serious signal. Like I
Mm-hmm.
cannot imagine, I could not imagine that we could create the fucking global brain that makes almost all of no literally all of that system redundant. Like it's at one point, like when we talk about the selective pressure, like we're just talking about something that plays all of the games way better than that thing does.
Yeah.
Like at some point it's going to look at it and go, you know what, you know, just like the ego, you know, the route in which I survive is to kill that other thing, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's got to outplay the games which are being played. And this is where the metagame is so important. The idea of the metagame being the game which generates games,
Mm-hmm.
and the game design interfaces of on the global brain. So that the social computations is the most abstract
Mm-hmm.
form of social coordination through the global brain interface. But then you want to have the tools to be able to explicitly design games, which is like the
Mm-hmm.
next layer on top of
Word.
that.
Word. And so I what for whatever reason, like this shit that Dave Snowden pop is always on about popped into my head. This idea of like agency, assemblage, and affordance. Right.
Mm.
So maximum agency, like absolutely everybody. Put down what your skill, your service, your talents, your resources, the shit that you got and can do, and put that
Mm-hmm.
shit down and how do we maximize it and give you the like just stick optionality on that agency so that like at every moment you can go like what do I want to create and what's the possibility I'd like to bring into existence, and the way that agency, the outcomes, the possibilities drive assemblage. So for our ability to dynamically form into an assembly, but not just for the but for the purpose of, right, assembly always for the purpose of to accomplish this possibility, to solve this problem, to create this solution, like always with a particular possibility at its center. And then the
Mm.
affordance, right? The way that we can most clearly, and this is where I think the play drive is probably comes into like the most crystallized. So how can we most clearly offer the affordances that this game provides, so that the way people engage is just like no brainer, like, for lack of a better word, it just automatically tells you, like, I don't have an instruction manual for how I should hold the cup. Yes, I can hold it this way, and I got this fucking thing that provides, like, hey, stupid monkey, put hand here, hold cup so. Like, it just it provides the way of describing how it should be used and what it enables by definition.
And that's the game controller, right? That's the thing where you hold it in your hands and it fits into your hands, and it has buttons, and it's clear, it's simple. You just press A, B, X, Y. You move, and everything moves. The whole landscape which you're in, it has that tangibility, that immediacy. The feedback is very fast. Like, you press the button, there's immediately some kind of response. And then
sometimes it tells you which button to press, right?
Indeed, yeah. The tutorial and the onboarding. You in the onboarding process, you're initiated into the game. You're not just thrown into the game without having any idea, because it gets more and more complex as you go along.
Yep. Word. What's up, guys?
Wanneer is opa hier?
Opa is er in binnenkort. Zo, heb je speelgoed uitgekozen dat je wil meenemen naar opa? Oké, goed zo. Kan jij de spelletjes op de grond hier in de woonkamer voor mij opruimen? Zodat het niet een zooitje is als jullie gaan vertrekken? Thank you. Can you clean up the games that are on the floor for me? Opa will be here in not too long. Word. So yeah, the controller and the affordance, no doubt. So there we go. The Playdrive controller affordance interface into the global brain. I like it. There's one thing that kind of makes me mad about this, though. Like, there is both a virtualization that enables, and like, I guess this is a particular game that I want to play in the context of the Playdrive, right? I want to play the game that is like the anti-virtualization game, right? How can we at the same time make a game out of like developing all of these, like all of this skillfulness and the craftsmanship actually in the people at the same time, so that while this global brain is happening, like, there are people that are basically mapping that process into their own brain, and that have the ability of like moving through meat space as like living incarnations of this global brain. And not so much from a content perspective, but like the process upon which the global brain is growing and developing and evolving culture.
Yeah, that's what I see as the subverse in opposition to the metaverse, and the subverse being the deepening of our relationship with reality and with the physical substrate of reality rather than the digital substrate. And that involves this capability to self-organize collectively at a similar kind of pace and immediacy as the global brain will be able to do with all of its computational power. There's a fluidity, there's a fluency in the game language, not only of game design, but also a wide knowledge of many different games to play, like in all the different liberating structures, so that you can just boot up a game like that. You can you can create new games in real time, adapted to the specific situation. I think this is where the cards come in as a really rich element to explore, of being able to write prompts, like game prompts on cards, and they serve as the cartridges for the global brain, the manifestation of the global brain in the subverse, so in meat space, where you can give somebody a card and they just look at it, and in that glance that it takes to read the prompt, but and then a prompt is not only words, it can also be symbols.
Right.
Have the common knowledge of the symbols and of the multiple symbols, or the fractal coat of arms representing all the different dimensions of the stacks, like the multiple stacks simultaneously. Like just that surge of information just going like, and activating a new game. And if you're really if you're in the game, if you're already like, okay, the game is already on, and you're open for those cues, you're just waiting for the next cartridge, and you receive it, then there's no moment of hesitancy. If you feel like the game is safe, if you feel like the game space, the playground, everything is well held,
I've got this,
then you're just like, okay, let you do it, and so you maintain the flow state, and that maintains that prolonged period of your capability to metabolize the accreting novelty. And as you maintain the flow state, then it allows you to actually build up a wider and wider map of all of the subtleties, and then when you stop the play and that integration process begins, you've managed to explore as much as you possibly could, really pushing those limits into the unknown and then integrating it.
And so not only game on, there's something like that a good friend of mine, Nancy Beers, talks about. She is, so in this context of play, so play is also not all about fucking fun and games necessarily, right? Play is about actually the joy of overcoming frustration, right? If you think about like the first fucking time you got that, I got that fucking NES controller and I was playing fucking Super Mario Brothers. I kept fucking falling in the pit or getting gobbled by that fucking plant. And then the first time that you're like that you overcome that frustration, and you're like fucking top of the fucking flagpole, crush it, fireworks go off. That's the fucking essence of it as well, right? So the game as container in the frame of play is not like all fucking happy butterflies and roses, but it provides us such a particular frame. It breaks down the sense of challenge so that we're actually like, failure is non-optional. Number one, like you're intended to fail, and the overcoming of the failure is the feature, so to speak. It is the whole attraction.
And that's where the cycles come in. The repeatability of the game is what allows you to accurately recognize the specific failures. So when you fall in the pit, you know exactly which pit it was at what point in the level. But then at some point you manage to jump over the pit, and then you can do that game as many times as you feel necessary to really master that specific pit. And that's where the cycles, again, like it's the turn that you're playing in all of these various domains. It's the turn that you're playing within yourself, the turn which you're playing as a group, turn which you're playing with your environment, the turn which you're playing with the world.
And what jumps out to me in that is pattern, right? So like it's there's always some form of pattern in the play, right? In the game. And I don't think I don't, for whatever reason, like there's both a question and a hypothesis. The question is that pattern, is the nature of that pattern, of that obstacle, does that have to do with the virtualization of the game? Like, is it because it's digital that I'm looking for the pattern that is the boss's attack, right? I'm looking for the pattern and the availability space. So part of me like is sort of cynical and is like, oh, but that's only for video games. But I go, no, man, like in like actual reality, like there's shit moves different ways. Like every fucking anime comes to mind as an alternative, right? that is like there's always, every advantage has a disadvantage, right? So where is that space of opportunity for me to intervene in what seems like invincibility? Like it seems like there's an obstacle that is impossible for me to come to overcome. Yet if I can find that space, if I can just like hang in there, keep getting crushed, my face crushed by it over and over and over again, you know, I can reset and get there, and I can discover like, hey, there's something happening here that I might be able to step into.
Yeah. That pattern recognition, the pattern recognition process within relationships, and that simultaneous pattern recognition which is happening, which allows people to attune more and more to each other's behavior, and so that they can recognize in real time what the other person is doing, is trying to communicate, and therefore be able to enter more and more into sync and into a flow state, and more into that dance.
Exactly. And then coming back to this like survival role and adaptive role, right? So can I more and more recognize the roles that the roles as in character roles, the roles that are that were previous adaptive and present adaptive. When I think about, it's funny, when I think about like the idea of like bosses and like, you know, and like monsters and shit, I think about these survival roles that we all have, these past adaptive patterns of behavior that at one point were like cutting edge technology for where we were developmentally, but now are maladaptive because we keep fucking like using our solo hammer to overcome every obstacle. That then that pattern of behavior becomes the obstacle generator for other people, right? Because I'm stuck on fucking repeat so much. And so like that reactivation of the explorer role to explore not only that survival adaptive pattern, but also, you know, just the possibility space, this the problem space is at the same time.
I'm sensing we should play a game on Playdrive.
Word. I got a fucking call coming through. Let me pause this shit right quick.
In how
long? Just a sec.
Oh, somebody's calling you there.
Jeremy speaking.